The morning Rosalind Lane's world fell apart started like any other Tuesday in Parowan, Utah, with the smell of fresh bread from the bakery and the sound of horses clopping down the dusty Main Street in the early summer of 1882. She had been working at Montgomery's General Store for 3 years, and at 21 years old, she had built a reputation as the most honest clerk in town. That reputation shattered the moment Mrs. Edith Montgomery stumbled upon what appeared to be stolen goods hidden beneath Rosalind's work apron in the storage room. The silver pocket watch, an expensive imported item that had gone missing from the display case just that morning, gleamed accusingly in the dim light. Rosalind's hands trembled as she stared at the watch. "I did not put that there. I swear on my mother's grave, Mrs. Montgomery, I have never stolen anything in my life." Mrs. Montgomery's face had gone pale, then red with fury. "How could you? After everything we have done for you. We took you in when you had nothing, when your parents passed and left you with barely enough to survive." The words cut deeper than any knife. Rosalind had lost both her parents to fever 2 winters ago, and the Montgomerys had indeed given her this job when she desperately needed it. But she had earned every penny with hard work and dedication. She would never betray that trust. "Please, you must believe me. Someone is setting me up." But Mrs. Montgomery was already calling for the sheriff, her voice carrying through the store and out into the street. Within minutes, it seemed the entire town had gathered. Rosalind stood frozen as Sheriff Dalton arrived, his weathered face grave as he listened to Mrs. Montgomery's accusations. "I am afraid I will have to take you to the jail until we sort this out, Miss Lane," he said, not unkindly but firmly. The walk to the jailhouse felt like a death march. People she had known for years lined the streets, whispering and pointing. Some looked sympathetic, but most wore expressions of judgment and disappointment. Rosalind kept her head high, even as tears threatened to spill down her cheeks. She would not give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. The jail cell was small and cold, even in the June heat. Rosalind sat on the hard cot and finally allowed herself to cry, great heaving sobs that shook her entire body. Everything she had worked for, every relationship she had built in this town, was crumbling around her. And the worst part was not knowing who had done this to her or why. She must have cried herself to sleep because when she woke, the sun was lower in the sky, casting long shadows through the barred window. The sound of voices in the front office caught her attention. "I want to see her." The voice was male, deep and unfamiliar. Rosalind sat up, wiping her face with her sleeve. "Not sure that is a good idea, Nathan," Sheriff Dalton replied. "The girl is pretty shaken up. I just need 5 minutes." Rosalind heard footsteps approaching, and then a man appeared in front of her cell. He was tall, probably in his mid-20s, with dark hair that curled slightly at the ends and the most striking green eyes she had ever seen. He wore the typical clothing of a ranch hand, dusty jeans, a worn shirt, scuffed boots, and a hat he held respectfully in his hands. "Miss Lane," he said quietly, "my name is Nathan Everett. I work at the Double R Ranch just outside of town." Rosalind stood, smoothing down her skirt with shaking hands. "I do not know what you want from me, Mr. Everett, but if you are here to gawk at the supposed thief, you can leave." Something flickered in his eyes. Respect, maybe. "Actually, I am here because I do not think you are a thief at all," her breath caught. "What?" Nathan glanced back toward the office, then stepped closer to the bars, lowering his voice. "I was in the store this morning early, before it officially opened. Mr. Montgomery lets me pick up supplies before I head out to the ranch. I saw you working, arranging the new inventory. You were humming while you worked, so careful with everything. Then I saw someone else come in through the back door." Rosalind's heart began to race. "Who?" I did not get a clear look at the face, but it was a woman. She moved real quick, like she did not want to be seen. She went into the storage room, and I thought maybe she worked there too. But then you went in after her, and she slipped out the back. I did not think much of it at the time, but when I heard what happened, it got me thinking. Why did you not say something right away? Rosalind asked, hope and frustration warring in her chest. Nathan ran a hand through his hair. I did not put it together until later. And honestly, I was not completely sure what I saw. But after hearing how Mrs. Montgomery found that watch in your apron, and seeing how the whole town turned on you so fast, I could not just stay quiet. Something about it does not sit right. Rosalind moved closer to the bars, studying his face. He had kind eyes, honest eyes. Why are you doing this? You do not even know me. Because everyone deserves the truth, Nathan said simply. And because I have been watching you for months. She blinked in surprise. Watching me. A faint color rose in his cheeks. Not in a strange way. I just mean, I have been coming to that store for a long time, and I have seen how you treat people. You are kind to everyone, even old Mr. Patterson when he gets confused and cannot remember what he came in for. You always make sure the children get a piece of candy. You work harder than anyone I have ever seen. That is not the character of a thief. Rosalind felt warmth spread through her chest despite the coldness of her situation. Thank you, she whispered. You have no idea what it means to have someone believe me. I am going to help you, Nathan said firmly. I am going to find out who really did this, and I am going to clear your name. How? You said you did not see the woman's face. No, but I saw other things. Details. The way she moved, her height, the color of her dress. It was a deep blue with some kind of pattern on it, and she had blonde hair lighter than yours, almost white in the sunlight. Rosalind's mind raced. That could be several women in town. Yes, but how many of them would have reason to frame you? Nathan asked. That is what we need to figure out. Who benefits from you being branded a thief? Sheriff Dalton appeared behind Nathan. Time's up, Everett. The lady needs her rest. Nathan nodded but caught Rosalind's eyes one more time. Do not lose hope. I will be back tomorrow. As he left, Rosalind felt something she had not felt since Mrs. Montgomery found that watch. Hope. Someone believed her. Someone was going to fight for her. And that someone was a handsome cowboy with kind eyes who barely knew her, but was willing to risk his reputation to help her. That night, Rosalind barely slept. She kept thinking about Nathan's words and trying to piece together who might have done this. She had always gotten along well with everyone at the store. Mrs. Montgomery could be strict, but she had never been cruel. Mr. Montgomery was generally absent, letting his wife run the business. The only other employee was Clara, the older woman who worked the counter on weekends. But Clara had no reason to hurt her. They had always been cordial, if not exactly friends. Rosalind racked her brain for anyone who might hold a grudge against her. There was Mary Sullivan, who had wanted the job at the store when Rosalind was hired, but that was 3 years ago. Surely she would have moved on by now. The next morning, Nathan returned as promised, this time with Sheriff Dalton in tow. Miss Lane, the sheriff said, Mr. Everett here has given me some information that warrants further investigation. I have agreed to let him ask around town a bit, see if his description of this mystery woman matches anyone. In the meantime, you will remain here, but I want you to know I am keeping an open mind about all this. Thank you, Sheriff, Rosalind said, genuine gratitude in her voice. After the sheriff left, Nathan pulled up a chair to sit near the cell. I have been thinking all night. Tell me about everyone you work with, everyone who comes into the store regularly, anyone who might have access to the storage room. Rosalind sat on her cot and began to talk. She told him about Mrs. Montgomery, about Clara, about the regular customers. She mentioned Mary Sullivan and the job situation, though she felt guilty even bringing it up since she had no proof. Nathan listened intently, occasionally asking questions. "This Mary Sullivan, what does she look like?" "Blonde hair, very fair. She is about my height, maybe a bit shorter. She usually wears her Sunday best when she comes into town." Rosalind paused. "She has a blue dress with white flowers on it. I remember because I always thought it was pretty." Nathan's eyes sharpened. "That could match what I saw. Where does she live?" "Her family has a small farm about 2 miles south of town." "But Nathan, I cannot believe Mary would do something like this." "Yes, she was disappointed about the job, but she has been perfectly pleasant to me whenever I see her." "Sometimes people hide their true feelings well," Nathan said. "But I will not jump to conclusions. I will talk to her, see what I can find out. In the meantime, is there anything you need, anything I can bring you?" Rosalind was touched by his thoughtfulness. "A book, perhaps. And if you could let my landlady, Mrs. Harper, know what happened. I am worried she will think I just disappeared." "Already done," Nathan said with a small smile. "I spoke to Mrs. Harper yesterday evening. She is worried about you but said to tell you she does not believe a word of it." Tears pricked at Rosalind's eyes again. "She is a good woman. She said the same about you." Nathan stood, placing his hat back on his head. "I will be back soon. Try not to worry too much." Over the next 3 days, Nathan became a constant presence in Rosalind's life. He visited every morning and evening, updating her on his investigation. He had spoken to Mary Sullivan, who had seemed genuinely confused and concerned about Rosalind's situation. Her blue dress had been borrowed by her cousin the week before and had not yet been returned. Nathan was now trying to track down this cousin. During their conversations, Rosalind learned more about Nathan. He was 24 and had been working at the Double R Ranch for 5 years, saving money to buy his own land someday. He had grown up in Nevada, the youngest of 4 brothers, and had come to Utah looking for opportunities. He loved horses and had a gift for training them. His dream was to have a ranch where he could breed and train horses for the cavalry and for ranchers across the territory. In turn, Rosalind shared her own story. How her parents had moved to Parowan when she was 15, hoping for a fresh start after losing their farm in a flood back in Missouri. How they had been happy here, despite their modest circumstances. How her mother had taught her to read and write, insisting that education was the key to a better life. How her father had worked himself to exhaustion trying to provide for them, and how the fever had taken them both within days of each other. "You have been through so much," Nathan said softly during one of their evening talks. The sun was setting, painting the jail cell in shades of orange and gold. "Yet you still manage to be kind, to see the good in people. That takes real strength." Rosalind felt her cheeks warm at his words. "I do not know about that. Right now, I mostly feel helpless." "You are not helpless," Nathan said firmly. "You are patient and dignified. You have not lashed out or grown bitter. That matters." "Easy for you to say. You are not the one locked in here." But she said it with a slight smile, not wanting him to think she was ungrateful. Nathan's expression grew serious. "If I could trade places with you, I would." The sincerity in his voice made her heart skip. "Why are you really doing this, Nathan? And please do not just say it is because everyone deserves the truth. There is more to it than that." He was quiet for a long moment, his green eyes holding hers. "Do you remember about 6 months ago when there was that bad storm, the one that flooded part of Main Street?" Rosalind nodded. "Of course, it was terrible. I was in town that day trying to get supplies before the worst of it hit. I saw you outside the store, helping old Mrs. Chen get her cart unstuck from the mud. You were soaked to the bone and you could have just gone inside where it was dry and safe. But you did not. You stayed with her, helped her get her goods home, and I watched you walk all the way to her house at the edge of town to make sure she was all right. I remember Mrs. Chen, but I do not remember you being there. I was across the street, waiting for the rain to let up. But I never forgot what I saw, and that was not the only time. I have watched you show kindness to people when you thought no one was looking. That is who you really are, Rosalind, not this thief the town wants to believe in. And I cannot stand by and let an innocent woman suffer for something she did not do. Rosalind's throat tightened with emotion. You are a good man, Nathan Everett. I am just a cowboy who knows right from wrong, he said, but there was something in his eyes, a warmth that went beyond simple justice. And who wants to get to know you better once we get you out of here? Before Rosalind could respond, Sheriff Dalton appeared. Everett, there is someone here to see you. Says it is urgent. Nathan stood quickly. I will be right back. Rosalind watched him go, her heart pounding in a way that had nothing to do with her current predicament and everything to do with the cowboy who was fighting for her freedom. Nathan returned a short while later, his expression tense but determined. That was Mary Sullivan's cousin, Hannah. She has something to confess. Rosalind stood up so quickly she nearly tripped. What? She admits to wearing the blue dress the morning the watch went missing. But she says she was only in the store to meet someone, not to steal anything. Meet who? Nathan's jaw tightened. She will not say yet. She is scared, but Sheriff Dalton is talking to her now. This could be the break we need. Over the next hour, Rosalind paced her cell while Nathan waited in the front office. She could hear muffled voices, occasionally raised in what sounded like argument. Finally, the door opened, and Sheriff Dalton appeared with Nathan close behind. Miss Lane, the sheriff said, it seems we have made some progress. Hannah Sullivan has admitted to being in the store that morning, but she insists she did not take the watch. However, she did see someone else in the storage room with you. Who? Rosalind demanded. Mrs. Montgomery's niece, Judith. She arrived in town about a month ago from back east. Rosalind's mind reeled. She had met Judith Montgomery briefly. The young woman was about her age, perhaps a year or two younger, with blonde hair and a haughty demeanor. She had come into the store a few times but had barely spoken to Rosalind. Why would Judith want to frame me? Sheriff Dalton scratched his chin. That is what we are going to find out. Hannah says she overheard Judith talking to someone about how you were in the way, how if you were gone, she could take over your position at the store. Apparently, Mrs. Montgomery had mentioned possibly leaving the store to Judith in her will, but only if Judith proved herself capable of running it. With you there, doing such a fine job, there was no opening for Judith. Anger flared in Rosalind's chest, hot and bright. So she decided to destroy my reputation and my life just to get a job. Greed and jealousy make people do terrible things, Nathan said quietly. We need proof, Sheriff Dalton said. Hannah's testimony helps, but it is still one person's word against another. We need something concrete. Nathan turned to the sheriff. What if we set a trap? If Judith thinks she got away with this once, she might try something again. What did you have in mind? Over the next several minutes, Nathan outlined a plan. Rosalind would be released on the condition that she return to work at the store, as Mrs. Montgomery was apparently willing to give her another chance given the new information. They would spread word that a valuable shipment of jewelry was coming in, items even more precious than the stolen watch. If Judith took the bait and tried to steal again, they would catch her in the act. It is risky, Sheriff Dalton said. If it goes wrong, you could be blamed again, Miss Lane. I am willing to take that risk if it means clearing my name once and for all, Rosalind said firmly. The next day, Rosalind walked out of the jail into the bright Utah sunshine. Her legs felt weak after days of confinement, but Nathan was there, offering his arm for support. Easy, he said gently. Take your time. Mrs. Harper was waiting outside, and she immediately pulled Rosalind into a tight embrace. Oh, my dear girl, I am so glad this nightmare is almost over. Thank you for believing in me, Rosalind whispered. Of course, child, I know your heart. Now, let us get you home and into a proper bath. You have been through enough. Nathan tipped his hat. I will check on you this evening if that is all right. Rosalind nodded, suddenly shy. I would like that, back at Mrs. Harper's boarding house. Rosalind luxuriated in a hot bath and clean clothes. Mrs. Harper had prepared her favorite meal, roast chicken with vegetables, and for the first time in days, Rosalind felt almost normal. That evening, as promised, Nathan appeared at the door. Mrs. Harper, bless her, made herself scarce after offering them tea and cookies, retreating to her own room with a knowing smile. How are you holding up? Nathan asked as they sat in the small parlor. Better now that I am out of that cell. But I am nervous about tomorrow, about facing everyone at the store. You have nothing to be ashamed of, Nathan said firmly. You have done nothing wrong. Remember that. I know, but it is hard not to care what people think. This town is all I have. Nathan reached across the space between them and took her hand. The gesture was bold but felt natural, comforting. You have me too. I know we have not known each other long, but these past few days, getting to know you, fighting for you, it has meant everything to me. Rosalind looked down at their joined hands, her heart racing. It has meant everything to me as well. I do not know what I would have done without you, Nathan. You believed in me when no one else did. I will always believe in you, he said softly. No matter what happens tomorrow or any day after, I see who you are, Rosalind. I see your strength and your kindness and your grace, and I would like the chance to keep seeing it if you will let me. She met his eyes, seeing the vulnerability there, the hope. I would like that very much. They talked late into the evening about everything and nothing. Nathan told her about his dreams for his ranch, describing it in such vivid detail that Rosalind could almost see it. A place with rolling pastures and strong fences, a barn filled with beautiful horses, and a house with a big kitchen and windows that caught the morning sun. It sounds wonderful, Rosalind said wistfully. I hope you will see it someday, Nathan said, when I finally make it real. The next morning came too quickly. Rosalind dressed carefully in her best work dress, dark green with white trim, and pinned her auburn hair up neatly. She looked at herself in the mirror and took a deep breath. She could do this. She would do this. Nathan was waiting outside to walk her to the store. Remember, Sheriff Dalton will be watching. I will be nearby too. You are safe. Mrs. Montgomery was already at the store when they arrived. She looked older somehow, more tired. Miss Lane, she said stiffly, I owe you an apology. I should not have been so quick to judge. Thank you, Mrs. Montgomery, Rosalind said, though the words felt hollow. The damage had been done, regardless of apologies. My niece Judith will be working today as well. She has expressed interest in learning the business. I expect you to train her. Rosalind's stomach churned, but she nodded. Of course. Judith arrived an hour later, all false smiles and sweet words. Rosalind, I am so glad this misunderstanding has been cleared up. I told Aunt Edith from the start that you could never have done such a thing. Liar, Rosalind thought but did not say. Instead, she smiled tightly. Thank you, Judith. That is very kind of you to say. Throughout the morning, Rosalind watched Judith carefully. The young woman was charming with customers, but had a calculating look in her eyes when she thought no one was watching. During a quiet moment, Rosalind mentioned the upcoming jewelry shipment, making sure to emphasize its value and when it would arrive. Judith's eyes had lit up with interest. How exciting! Will it be kept in the usual place? In the safe in the storage room, yes, Rosalind said, playing her part. Over the next few days, the tension built. The fictional jewelry shipment was set to arrive on Friday afternoon. Nathan continued to visit Rosalind each evening, and their connection deepened with each conversation. He made her laugh with stories of mishaps at the ranch. She shared memories of her parents and her hopes for the future, hopes that were starting to include a certain green-eyed cowboy. One evening, as they sat on Mrs. Harper's porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and purple, Nathan took her hand again. "When this is all over," he said quietly, "when your name is cleared and everything is back to normal, I want to court you properly, Rosalind. I want to take you to church socials and on picnics and anywhere else you would like to go. I want everyone in this town to know that you are my girl if you will have me." Rosalind's breath caught. "Nathan, I would be honored, but are you sure? My reputation, even once cleared, might always have a shadow over it. Some people will always wonder." "I do not care what some people think," Nathan said firmly. "I care about you, and anyone who matters will see the truth." She squeezed his hand. "Then yes. I would very much like to be courted by you." He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted, but she did not want to. When his lips met hers, gentle and warm, it felt like coming home. The kiss was brief but full of promise, and when they pulled apart, both were smiling. Friday arrived with clear skies and high tension. The store was busier than usual, with the weekly influx of ranchers and farmers coming to town for supplies. Rosalind worked mechanically, her mind on what was supposed to happen that afternoon. The jewelry shipment arrived right on schedule, carried in by one of Sheriff Dalton's deputies dressed as a courier. Rosalind made a show of signing for it and carrying the box to the storage room, speaking loudly enough for Judith to hear. "Such beautiful pieces," she said to Mrs. Montgomery. "The sapphire necklace alone must be worth a fortune." After the box was locked in the safe, Rosalind returned to the front of the store. Judith was helping a customer, but Rosalind caught the gleam in her eye, the way her gaze kept darting toward the storage room. The afternoon dragged on. Customers came and went. Mrs. Montgomery left at 4 o'clock to attend a meeting of the Ladies' Aid Society, leaving Rosalind and Judith alone in the store. Rosalind's heart pounded as she watched the clock. Any moment now. At 4:30, Judith suddenly announced she needed to use the privy out back. Rosalind nodded, pretending to be absorbed in her ledger. As soon as Judith disappeared, Rosalind moved to a position where she could see the storage room door through a gap in the shelves. Minutes passed. Then Judith reappeared, but instead of heading outside, she slipped into the storage room. Rosalind waited, counting slowly in her head. When she reached 30, she moved quietly toward the storage room, staying out of sight. Through the crack in the door, she could see Judith at the safe, her hands working quickly on the combination. How did she know it? Had she watched Mrs. Montgomery? The safe door swung open and Judith reached inside, pulling out the wooden box. "That is far enough, Miss Montgomery." Sheriff Dalton stepped out from behind a stack of crates where he had been hiding. Judith shrieked and dropped the box, her face going white. "I was just checking to make sure it was secure," she stammered. "With the safe open and the box in your hands." The sheriff shook his head. "I do not think so." Rosalind stepped into the storage room and Judith's expression turned venomous when she saw her. "This is your fault," she hissed. "You and your perfect reputation, your perfect work. Aunt Edith was never going to give me a chance with you here. So you framed me for theft." Rosalind asked, her voice steady despite the anger coursing through her. "You tried to destroy my life because you wanted my job. You do not deserve it. You are nobody, just some orphan girl with no family and no prospects. I have a right to this store. It should be mine." "The only thing you have a right to is a cell in my jail," Sheriff Dalton said, taking Judith by the arm. "Come along quietly now." As the sheriff led Judith away, Nathan appeared in the doorway. He must have been waiting outside. His eyes found Rosalind's, and he crossed the room in 3 long strides, pulling her into his arms. "It is over," he said into her hair. "It is finally over." Rosalind clung to him, letting the relief wash over her. She had been so strong for so long, but now, in the safety of his embrace, she finally let herself feel everything. The fear, the anger, the hurt, and finally, the overwhelming relief. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for believing in me, for fighting for me." "Always," Nathan promised. "I will always fight for you." The next few days were a whirlwind. Judith was formally charged with theft and fraud. Under questioning, she admitted to stealing the original watch and planting it in Rosalind's apron. Mrs. Montgomery was devastated by her niece's betrayal and apologized profusely to Rosalind, offering her a raise and a partnership in the store as recompense. The town's attitude toward Rosalind shifted dramatically. People who had whispered and judged now went out of their way to express their regrets. Some apologies felt genuine, others felt hollow. But Rosalind accepted them all with grace, just as Nathan knew she would. On Sunday, Nathan picked Rosalind up for church in a borrowed buggy, making good on his promise to court her properly. They sat together during the service, and afterward, he introduced her to his friends from the ranch. Everyone was warm and welcoming, and Rosalind felt the last of the shadows from her ordeal begin to lift. Over the following weeks, Nathan courted Rosalind with a dedication that made her heart soar. He took her on picnics by the creek, where they talked for hours about their dreams and fears. He brought her wildflowers that he picked on his rides across the range. He came to Sunday dinners at Mrs. Harper's, charming the older woman with his polite manners and obvious devotion to Rosalind. One evening, about 2 months after Judith's arrest, Nathan took Rosalind on a ride out to a piece of land a few miles from town. The sun was setting, casting the valley in golden light. He helped her down from the horse and led her to a small rise overlooking a beautiful stretch of grassland with a creek running through it. "This is it," he said quietly. "This is where I want to build my ranch." Rosalind looked out at the land, imagining the vision Nathan had described to her. "It is perfect, Nathan. It is exactly as you described it. I put down the payment yesterday," he said. "It is mine. Well, it will be fully mine once I pay it off, but that is just a matter of time." "I am so proud of you," Rosalind said, squeezing his hand. Nathan turned to face her, and she saw something serious in his expression, something that made her pulse quicken. "I did not just bring you here to show you the land," he said. "I brought you here because this is where I want to build a future, but not just any future. A future with you if you will have me." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. When he opened it, Rosalind gasped. Inside was a simple gold band with a small diamond, modest but beautiful. "Rosalind Lane," Nathan said, dropping to one knee. "You are the strongest, kindest, most amazing woman I have ever known. From the moment I saw you being brave in that jail cell, refusing to let injustice break your spirit, I knew you were special. Getting to know you these past months has only confirmed what my heart knew from the start. I love you, Rosalind. I love your courage and your compassion. I love the way you see the good in people. I love your laugh and your smile and the way you make me want to be a better man. Will you marry me? Will you help me build this ranch and this life and this future together?" Tears streamed down Rosalind's face, but they were tears of joy. "Yes," she said, her voice breaking with emotion. "Yes, Nathan, I will marry you. I love you too. I have loved you since you first walked into that jail and told me you believed in me. You gave me hope when I had none, and you have given me more happiness than I ever dreamed possible. Yes, I will marry you. Nathan stood and slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into a kiss that was deeper and more passionate than any they had shared before. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless and grinning. "I cannot wait to be your wife," Rosalind said. "And I cannot wait to be your husband," Nathan replied, kissing her forehead, her cheeks, her lips again. They were married 6 weeks later in the small church in Parowan. Mrs. Harper cried happy tears throughout the ceremony. Mrs. Montgomery attended, looking genuinely pleased for Rosalind, and perhaps a bit relieved that she was not losing her best employee entirely. Rosalind had agreed to continue working at the store part-time while helping Nathan establish the ranch. Nathan's friends from the Double R Ranch filled the pews, along with many of the townspeople who had come to genuinely respect Rosalind and admire Nathan. Even Sheriff Dalton attended, giving Rosalind a rare smile as she walked down the aisle in a simple white dress that Mrs. Harper had helped her sew. When Nathan saw her coming toward him, his eyes filled with tears. She looked like an angel, her auburn hair adorned with small white flowers, her face glowing with happiness. As she reached him and took his hands, he whispered, "You are so beautiful." "You are not so bad yourself," she whispered back, making him laugh. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt. When the preacher pronounced them man and wife, Nathan kissed Rosalind with such tenderness and joy that several people in the congregation sighed audibly. Walking back down the aisle as Mr. and Mrs. Nathan Everett felt like the beginning of everything Rosalind had ever wanted. The reception was held at Mrs. Harper's boarding house, with food and dancing and laughter that lasted well into the evening. Nathan never left Rosalind's side, his hand always finding hers, his eyes always seeking her out. When they finally left in the buggy decorated with ribbons and flowers, heading toward the small cabin Nathan had built on their land, Rosalind felt like her heart might burst with happiness. The cabin was modest, just 3 rooms, but Nathan had worked so hard on it. Every board was carefully placed, every window positioned to catch the best light. He had even built her a bookshelf in the main room, knowing how much she loved to read. "Welcome home, Mrs. Everett," Nathan said, sweeping her into his arms and carrying her over the threshold. Rosalind laughed, clinging to his shoulders. "I love the sound of that, Mrs. Everett." "Good, because you are stuck with it now," Nathan said, setting her down gently but keeping his arms around her. That night, in the privacy of their new home, Nathan and Rosalind came together as husband and wife. He was gentle and patient, taking time to make sure she was comfortable, that she knew how much he loved her. Rosalind had been nervous, but Nathan's tenderness and the deep love she felt for him made everything feel natural and right. Afterward, lying in his arms with the moonlight streaming through the window, she felt complete in a way she had never felt before. "I love you, Rosalind Everett," Nathan murmured against her hair. "I love you too, Nathan, more than words can say." The first year of their marriage was filled with hard work, but also profound joy. Nathan worked tirelessly on the ranch, building fences, constructing a barn, and acquiring his first horses. Rosalind helped however she could while continuing her part-time work at the store. She also started a small vegetable garden and learned to cook the hearty meals Nathan needed after long days of physical labor. They faced challenges, of course. Money was tight as they were still paying off the land. There were harsh winter storms that tested the strength of their cabin and their resolve. One of their first horses got sick, and they spent sleepless nights nursing it back to health. But through it all, they had each other. Every obstacle seemed surmountable because they faced it together. Nathan proved to be everything Rosalind had hoped for in a husband. He was hardworking and honest, patient and kind. He never dismissed her opinions or treated her as lesser. Instead, he valued her input on the ranch, on their finances, on their future. They made decisions together, sitting at their small kitchen table over coffee, talking through every option. Rosalind, in turn, was the partner Nathan needed. She managed their household with efficiency and grace. She kept their books meticulously, ensuring they stayed on budget. She also had a gift with the horses, Nathan discovered. They seemed to respond to her gentle voice and patient manner, and soon she was helping him with the training. One evening in late spring, about a year and a half after their wedding, Rosalind was preparing dinner when a wave of nausea hit her. She barely made it outside before being sick. Nathan found her a few minutes later, pale and shaky. "Are you all right?" "What happened?" he asked, immediately concerned. "I am fine," Rosalind said, though she did not feel fine. "Just my stomach being disagreeable." It happened again the next morning and the morning after that. On the fourth day, Mrs. Harper, who had stopped by to visit, took one look at Rosalind and smiled knowingly. "My dear, I think you might be expecting." Rosalind's hand went to her stomach. Could it be? She thought back and realized her monthly courses were late. How had she not noticed? "Do you really think so?" she asked Mrs. Harper, hope and fear mingling in her voice. "I would bet my best Sunday hat on it," Mrs. Harper said warmly. "Have you told Nathan?" I wanted to be sure first. A visit to the doctor in town the next week confirmed it. Rosalind was indeed with child, about 2 months along. The doctor said everything looked good and to expect the baby sometime in late October or early November. Rosalind rode home in a daze, her hand resting on her still flat stomach. She was going to be a mother. She and Nathan were going to have a baby. The thought filled her with equal parts terror and elation. Nathan was in the barn when she arrived home. She found him brushing down one of the horses, his shirt sleeves rolled up, his face focused on his task. He looked up when she entered and immediately smiled. "How did it go in town? What did the doctor say?" Rosalind tried to speak but found herself tearing up instead. Nathan dropped the brush and came to her immediately. "What is wrong? Are you sick? Is it serious?" "No, nothing is wrong," Rosalind managed. "Everything is wonderful, actually. Nathan, I am with child. We are going to have a baby." For a moment, Nathan just stared at her. Then a smile broke across his face, wider than any she had ever seen. He let out a whoop of joy and picked her up, spinning her around. "Careful," she laughed. "Put me down before you make me sick again." He set her down gently, immediately looking apologetic. "I am sorry. Are you all right? Should you be riding? Should you be working? Maybe you should rest." "Nathan, I am fine. Pregnancy is not an illness, but yes, I might need to take things a bit easier for a while." He pulled her close, his hand coming to rest on her stomach. "We are going to be parents," he said wonderingly. "You and me, Rosalind, we are going to have a family." "Yes, we are," she said, covering his hand with hers. The months of Rosalind's pregnancy were filled with preparation and anticipation. Nathan became even more protective, insisting she not lift anything heavy or work too hard. He built a cradle in their bedroom, sanding it until it was smooth as silk. Rosalind sewed tiny clothes and blankets, her heart overflowing with love for the child she had not yet met. She continued working at the store until her 7th month, when Mrs. Montgomery gently suggested she stay home and rest. By then, Rosalind was more than ready. Her back ached, her feet swelled, and the Utah summer heat made everything more uncomfortable, but Nathan was there for her through it all. He rubbed her aching back, brought her cold water, read to her in the evenings. He talked to her growing belly, telling their baby about the ranch, about the horses, about how much they were already loved. On a crisp November evening, Rosalind's labor began. Mrs. Harper had come to stay with them the week before, anticipating the baby's arrival, and she immediately took charge. Nathan rode to town to fetch the doctor, while Mrs. Harper helped Rosalind into bed and began preparations. The labor was long and difficult. Rosalind had known it would hurt, but nothing could have prepared her for the intensity of it. She gripped Mrs. Harper's hand so hard she was sure she would break the woman's fingers. Nathan returned with the doctor and stayed by her side, his face pale with worry but his voice calm and encouraging. "You can do this, Rosalind," he kept saying. "You are the strongest person I know. You can do this." And she did. After 18 hours of labor, as the sun rose on a new day, Rosalind brought their child into the world. The baby's cry filled the room, and Rosalind collapsed back against the pillows, exhausted but triumphant. "It is a boy," the doctor announced, placing the squirming, wailing infant on Rosalind's chest. "A healthy baby boy." Rosalind looked down at her son, this tiny perfect person she and Nathan had created, and felt a love so fierce it took her breath away. He had a dusting of dark hair, like Nathan, and when he finally opened his eyes, they were a deep blue that might turn green with time. "He is perfect," she whispered. Nathan, who had tears streaming down his face, leaned over to look at his son. "He really is. You did so well, Rosalind. I am so proud of you." They named him Thomas after Rosalind's father. Thomas Everett made his presence known from the start, crying lustily when he was hungry, which was often, and sleeping only when held. But neither Nathan nor Rosalind minded. They took turns walking him, rocking him, singing to him. Their small cabin was filled with the sounds of a baby, and it felt right. Mrs. Harper stayed for 2 weeks, helping Rosalind recover and teaching her the basics of caring for an infant. When she finally returned to her boarding house, she hugged Rosalind tightly. "You are going to be a wonderful mother," she said. "You already are." "Thank you," Rosalind said, "for everything. I do not know what I would have done without you." "You would have done just fine," Mrs. Harper said. "You always do." Life settled into a new rhythm. Rosalind's days were consumed with caring for Thomas, while Nathan continued to build the ranch. It was exhausting but also deeply fulfilling. Watching Nathan with their son filled Rosalind with a warmth she had not known was possible. He was so gentle with Thomas, so patient. He would come in from a long day of work, covered in dust and sweat, and immediately reach for the baby, his face lighting up with pure joy. As Thomas grew from an infant into a toddler, the ranch continued to thrive. Nathan's reputation as a skilled horse trainer spread, and people came from all over the territory to buy his horses or to have him train theirs. The money was still not plentiful, but it was steady, and they were able to pay off their land ahead of schedule. When Thomas was 2, Rosalind discovered she was pregnant again. This time, the pregnancy was easier, perhaps because she knew what to expect. Nathan was just as attentive as before, maybe more so, because now he had Thomas to help him take care of Mama. Their daughter arrived on a warm June evening, her birth much quicker than Thomas's had been. She came into the world with a head full of auburn hair like her mother's and eyes that would eventually turn a striking green like her father's. "Emma," Rosalind said, looking down at her daughter. "Let us name her Emma." "Emma Everett," Nathan said, trying it out. "It is perfect. She is perfect." With 2 children, life became even busier, but Rosalind and Nathan worked together seamlessly, supporting each other through the sleepless nights and chaotic days. They expanded the cabin, adding 2 more rooms so the children could have their own space. Nathan hired a young ranch hand to help with the work, freeing him up to spend more time with his family. On Thomas's 5th birthday, Nathan took his son out to the barn to show him something special. Rosalind watched from the porch, Emma on her hip, as Nathan led out a small pony. "This is Thunder," Nathan told Thomas, "and he is yours. I am going to teach you how to ride, just like my father taught me." Thomas's eyes went wide with excitement. "Really? He is really mine, he really is." But owning a horse is a big responsibility. You have to take care of him, feed him, brush him, make sure he has water. Can you do that? "Yes, Papa, I promise." Rosalind smiled as she watched her husband patiently help their son onto the pony's back. This was the life she had dreamed of during those dark days in the jail cell when Nathan had first promised to fight for her. She had hoped for love, for family, for a place to belong. And she had found all of that and more. As the years passed, the Everett Ranch became known as one of the best in southern Utah. Nathan's horses were sought after for their quality and temperament. Rosalind managed the business side of things, keeping the books and negotiating prices with buyers. Together, they built something solid and lasting. Thomas grew into a responsible young man who loved horses as much as his father did. Emma was quieter but had a gift for healing animals. She would often be found in the barn, tending to a horse with a sore leg or a bird with a broken wing. When Thomas was 10 and Emma was 8, Rosalind and Nathan welcomed twin boys into the family. The births were complicated, and Rosalind spent several scary days recovering, but both babies were healthy and strong. They named them James and Jacob, and they brought even more joy and chaos into the Everett household. One evening, when the twins were about 6 months old and finally sleeping through the night, Nathan and Rosalind sat on their porch watching the sunset. It had become their favorite time of day, this quiet moment when the children were in bed and they could just be together. "You ever think about that day?" Nathan asked, his arm around Rosalind's shoulders. "The day I first came to see you in that jail cell?" "Sometimes," Rosalind said. "It feels like a lifetime ago now." "I knew that day," Nathan said. "I knew you were going to change my life." "You changed mine," Rosalind said. "You saved me, Nathan, not just from jail, but from being alone. You gave me a family, a home, a purpose. You gave me everything." "You gave me everything too," Nathan said, pulling her closer. "I was just a cowboy with a dream. You made that dream real. You made me better than I ever thought I could be." Rosalind turned to look at him, this man she had loved for so many years now. His face had lines that had not been there when they first met, weathered from sun and wind and hard work. But his eyes were the same, kind and honest and full of love. "I would do it all again," she said. "Every hardship, every struggle, every scary moment. I would do it all again for this, for you, for our family." Nathan kissed her, slow and sweet. "So would I." They sat together as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink. In the distance, the horses grazed peacefully in the pasture. From inside the house came the faint sound of one of the twins fussing, quickly soothed by Emma's soft singing. Thomas was probably reading in his room, lost in one of the adventure books he loved so much. This was their life. Not perfect, but real and full and theirs. Rosalind thought about the scared young woman she had been, sitting in that jail cell, her reputation in tatters and her future uncertain. She thought about the brave cowboy who had believed in her when no one else did, who had fought for her and loved her and built a life with her. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For seeing the truth, for seeing me." Nathan smiled and kissed her forehead. "I will always see you, Rosalind. Always." As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Rosalind leaned against her husband's shoulder and counted her blessings. She had been branded a thief, wrongly accused and alone. But a cowboy had seen the truth, had cleared her name with love and determination, and had given her a life beyond anything she could have imagined. She was Rosalind Everett, wife and mother, partner in a successful ranch, and most importantly, loved. She was loved deeply and completely by a good man who had proven time and again that he would always stand by her side, and that, she thought, was the greatest gift of all. Years continued to pass in the way they do in a happy life, marked by the small milestones and quiet joys that make up a family's story. Thomas eventually took over much of the horse training, proving to have inherited his father's natural gift. Emma married a young veterinarian who had come to town, and they built a practice together, caring for animals across the county. The twins grew into fine young men, one choosing to expand the ranch's operations and the other becoming a teacher in Parowan. Nathan and Rosalind grew old together, their love deepening with each passing year. They added grandchildren to their family, and the ranch that had started as Nathan's dream became a legacy passed down through generations. On their 50th wedding anniversary, surrounded by their children, grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren, Nathan stood and raised a glass. 50 years ago, I married the most remarkable woman I had ever met, he said, his voice still strong despite his years. She had been through an ordeal that would have broken many people, but she faced it with courage and grace. She made me a better man, a better father, a better everything. Rosalind, my love, you are still the most beautiful thing I have ever seen. Rosalind, her hair now silver but her eyes still bright, smiled at him. And you are still my hero, Nathan Everett, the cowboy who believed in me when no one else did. They kissed to the cheers and applause of their family, and in that moment, Rosalind reflected on the journey they had taken together. From that dark jail cell to this moment of celebration, every step had been worth it. Every challenge they had faced had only made them stronger. She had been branded a thief, but the cowboy had seen the truth. He had cleared her name with love, and in doing so had given her the greatest gift imaginable: a life filled with purpose, family, and endless love. As she looked around at the faces of her children and their children, all of them here because of the love she and Nathan shared, Rosalind knew that their story was one worth telling. It was a story of injustice overcome, of truth prevailing, and most of all, of love conquering all. And it was a story that would live on, passed down through the generations, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, hope and love can light the way forward. The sun set over the Utah landscape, casting long shadows across the Everett Ranch. Inside the house that Nathan had built with his own hands all those years ago, laughter and conversation filled the air. Rosalind sat in her favorite chair, Nathan beside her, their hands clasped together as they had been for 50 years. No regrets. Nathan asked softly, a question he had asked her many times over the years. Not a single one, Rosalind replied, just as she always did. You. Only that I did not meet you sooner, Nathan said with a smile. We found each other exactly when we were supposed to, Rosalind said. And we have made the most of every moment since. As the evening wore on and their family slowly departed to their own homes, promising to return soon, Nathan and Rosalind remained on their porch, watching the stars emerge in the vast Utah sky. I love you, Rosalind Everett, Nathan said, just as he had said countless times before. And I love you, Nathan Everett, Rosalind replied, the words as true and meaningful as they had been the first time she had spoken them. They sat together in comfortable silence, two souls who had found each other in the most unlikely of circumstances and had built a beautiful life together. The cowboy who had believed in an accused woman's innocence, the woman who had never lost faith that truth would prevail. Together, they had proven that love, true love, could overcome any obstacle. And as they sat there under the stars, Rosalind thought about that frightened young woman in the jail cell, the one who had thought her life was over. If she could go back and tell that woman what the future held, she would say, "Hold on. Have faith. The best is yet to come." Because a cowboy with kind eyes and an honest heart is about to walk into your life and change everything. The truth would set her free, but love would give her wings to soar. And soar she had, higher and further than she ever dreamed possible, all because a cowboy had seen the truth and cleared her name with love. Their story was complete, a circle closed, a promise fulfilled. From the darkness of false accusation to the light of a life well lived, from the loneliness of being wrongly judged to the warmth of being surrounded by family, Rosalind and Nathan had traveled the journey together, hand in hand, heart to heart. And in the end, that made all the difference.